My wife, the CEO, fired me after I took 2 days off to attend my father's funeral, just to please her office boyfriend. Despite having approved my leave, I need people who prioritize their work, not lazy at work and in bed. The email read when I returned. I didn't argue or threaten legal action. I simply packed my things and left her company and her marriage. A week later, in total panic, the regional manager called. You know that feeling when your whole world just stops? Like someone hit the pause button on your life and everything around you keeps moving, but you're frozen in place? That's exactly what happened to me on a Tuesday morning in October, sitting in my corner office at Orion Freight Systems, staring at my computer screen like it had just grown fangs. My name is Julian Cross, and up until that moment, I thought I had it all figured out. Senior operations manager at a company that was basically my second child. Hell, maybe my first child, considering how much blood, sweat, and sleepless nights I'd poured into it. The irony? My wife Marissa was the CEO, the face of the company, the one who got all the interviews and magazine covers. But I was the guy who made sure the trains ran on time, if you know what I mean. We'd been married for 7 years, and those 7 years felt like a lifetime of building something together. Started in our cramped studio apartment with nothing but a laptop, a dream, and way too much takeout Chinese food. I remember those early days when Marissa would pace around our tiny living room at 2 a.m., sketching out business plans on napkins while I crunched numbers on spreadsheets that probably violated every rule of proper accounting. We were a team back then, her vision, my execution. Batman and Robin. Except we couldn't figure out who was who. I'd given up my own shot at starting a consulting firm to help her build Orion. Didn't think twice about it, honestly. When you love someone, you make sacrifices. You put their dreams first because you believe in them, because you want to see them succeed. I figured there'd be time for my own ambitions later, after we got Orion off the ground. Funny how later never seems to come, you know? The past week had been absolute hell. My father, the toughest son of a bitch I'd ever known, finally lost his battle with cancer. Pancreatic, stage 4, the kind that doesn't give you time to say all the things you should have said years ago. I'd taken bereavement leave, something I'd never done in my entire career at Orion. Even during our worst quarters, even when we were pulling all-nighters just to keep our biggest clients from jumping ship, I was there. Always there. But when your old man is dying, work becomes just work. So I took the time, held his hand in that sterile hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Listened to him tell stories about his Navy days for the 1,000th time, except now I hung on every word because I knew I'd never hear them again. Marissa came to the funeral, of course. Stood next to me in her black dress, squeezed my hand during the eulogy, played the supportive wife perfectly. 2 days after we put Dad in the ground, I dragged myself back to the office. Figured work might help, you know? Keep my mind busy, get back into the routine that had kept me sane for years. I grabbed my usual coffee from the lobby, large, black, no sugar, and rode the elevator up to the 15th floor like I had 1,000 times before. That's when I saw it. The email that would change everything. At first glance, it looked like spam. The subject line was simple: immediate action required. Could have been anything: IT updates, policy changes, the usual corporate bullshit that clutters your inbox. But it was from Marissa's personal email, not her company account. That should have been my first red flag. I clicked it open and started reading. Clear your desk by end of day. HR will handle your exit. My brain did this weird thing where it just stopped processing. Like when you're driving and suddenly realize you don't remember the last 5 miles. I read the line again. Then again. Maybe it was a mistake, right? Maybe she sent it to the wrong Julian. Maybe there was some other Julian Cross working at Orion Freight Systems who deserved to get fired via email while he was still processing his father's death. But then I kept reading. I need people who prioritize their work. Not lazy at work and in bed. The coffee mug slipped from my hand. I didn't even hear it shatter on the floor. All I could do was stare at those words, feeling something cold and sharp twist in my gut. She'd signed it herself. Not M. Cross, CEO, like her usual professional emails. Just Marissa, my wife. The woman I'd held through panic attacks when investor meetings went south. The woman I'd carried, literally carried, when she collapsed from exhaustion during our first year of operation. The woman who apparently thought I was lazy in bed. 7 years of marriage, And she fires me via email 2 days after my father's funeral. Calls me lazy. Destroys everything we built together with a few sentences that read like they were written by a stranger. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, just staring at the screen. Part of me wanted to march down to her office and demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to forward the email to every employee in the company and watch her try to explain why she'd just torched her own marriage and business relationship in one shot. Part of me wanted to cry, if I'm being honest. But then I heard my father's voice in my head, clear as if he was sitting right next to me. Walk out like a man, Julian. Don't give them a show, give them silence. Dad always said that dignity was the one thing nobody could take from you unless you handed it over. He'd learned that in the Navy, dealing with officers who thought they were God's gift to maritime strategy. When someone shows you who they really are, he used to say, believe them the first time, but don't let them see you break. So I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't storm down to Marissa's corner office and demand answers I probably didn't want to hear anyway. I just started packing. 7 years of my life fit into 2 cardboard boxes and a small plant that Rena from marketing had given me for my birthday. Photos of successful project launches, industry awards with both our names on them, a coffee mug that said, World's Okayest Manager, a gag gift from the team that had somehow become my favorite. All of it going into boxes like I was some intern who'd screwed up the copy machine. The whole time, I kept thinking about how we'd started this company. How Marissa used to ask for my opinion on everything. How she'd say I was the smartest person she knew. How she'd tell people at industry events that Orion wouldn't exist without me. When did that change? When did I become deadweight she could just cut loose with a cruel email? As I packed, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I wasn't going to beg or plead or ask for explanations. I was going to walk out of here with my head high, just like Dad would have done. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. You ever notice how news travels in an office? It's like some kind of weird corporate telepathy. 1 minute you're quietly packing your shit, trying to maintain whatever dignity you have left, and the next minute half the floor is staring at you like you've grown a second head. That's exactly what was happening as I methodically placed my stuff into those cardboard boxes, trying to ignore the growing crowd of confused faces gathering around my desk. The first person to actually grow a pair and ask what was going on was Rena Martinez, our marketing lead. Rena was one of those people who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank her for it. She'd been with us for 3 years, ever since she'd walked into our office straight out of grad school with a portfolio that made us forget we couldn't really afford to hire anyone. Smart as hell, loyal to a fault, and absolutely fearless when it came to calling out bullshit. Julian, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you leaving? I looked up from the box where I was carefully wrapping my desk lamp, a stupid little thing shaped like a robot that Marissa had bought me for our 2nd anniversary. Said it reminded her of me because I was always illuminating solutions. Funny how things that used to be sweet memories now felt like knives in your chest. Yes, I said simply, keeping my voice steady. I've been fired. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. Rena's face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and something that looked like genuine hurt. She'd always looked up to me, treated me like a mentor. Hell, I'd practically trained her myself, taught her everything I knew about client relations and project management. But you just buried your dad, she whispered, and the way she said it made my chest tight. Like she couldn't believe anyone could be that heartless. I know, I said, because what else was there to say? That my wife had apparently decided grieving made me a liability? That 7 years of building this company together meant less to her than whatever game she was playing now? That's when Marco Vasquez, our logistics tech, came over. Marco was a straight shooter, the kind of guy who could spot a problem from a mile away and fix it before anyone else even knew it existed. He'd started as an intern 2 years ago and worked his way up through pure talent and determination. Kid reminded me of myself at that age, back when I still believed hard work automatically led to loyalty and respect. This is insane, Marco said, and I could hear the anger building in his voice. You're the reason we met our quarterly numbers. You're the one who saved the Peterson account when they were ready to walk. You're the one who... Marco, I cut him off gently. I appreciated the support, I really did, but I didn't need a list of my accomplishments read back to me. I knew what I'd done for this company. I knew my worth. The problem was, apparently my wife didn't. Word spread through the office like wildfire. Within minutes, I had my whole crew standing around my desk like some kind of corporate funeral gathering. Danica Walsh from HR. Ironic, considering she hadn't been the one to handle my exit, stood there looking genuinely pissed off. Tarek Johnson from Operations Management kept shaking his head like he couldn't process what he was seeing. Luis Moreno from Client Services had his arms crossed, radiating the kind of quiet fury that meant someone was about to get an earful. And Zoya Petrov, our newest hire in logistics coordination, looked like she was about to cry. These were my people. The team I'd built, trained, and fought for over the years. We'd pulled all-nighters together, celebrated wins together, weathered the storms that nearly sank the company more times than I could count. They weren't just employees, they were family. And now I was being ripped away from them without so much as a proper goodbye. Let me guess, Danica muttered, her Irish accent getting thicker the way it always did when she was pissed. This has something to do with Carter. Carter fucking Henley. The new executive assistant who'd started 6 months ago with his perfect smile, expensive suits, and the kind of charm that made you want to punch him in the face. 28 years old, fresh out of some Ivy League MBA program, and absolutely convinced he was the smartest person in every room he walked into. Marissa had hired him personally, said we needed someone with fresh perspective and innovative thinking. What we got was a brown-nosing little weasel who spent more time in Marissa's office than actually doing his job. Always volunteering for special projects, always staying late to help with strategic initiatives, always finding reasons to travel with her to client meetings and industry conferences. I'd had my suspicions for months, but I'd pushed them down, told myself I was being paranoid, told myself Marissa would never. But hell, apparently I didn't know my wife as well as I thought I did. I didn't answer Danica's question, but the look on my face must have said everything. She nodded grimly, like I'd just confirmed what everyone already suspected. That little shit, Tarek said under his breath. I knew something was off about him. Always skulking around, always asking questions about projects that weren't his business. He's been in her office every day this week, Luis added. Door closed, hushed conversations. I thought it was just business, but business doesn't usually involve firing your husband via email, Zoya finished, her Russian accent making the words sound even more harsh than they were. The thing that really got to me wasn't the betrayal itself, though that stung like hell. It was seeing how it affected my team. These people had believed in the company, believed in what we were building together. They'd trusted Marissa's leadership, respected her vision. And now they were seeing her true colors, watching her throw away everything we'd worked for because she couldn't keep her personal and professional lives separate. I finished packing the last of my things and stood up, shouldering my bag. The office had gone quiet, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. Part of me wanted to give them a speech, to tell them how much they meant to me, how proud I was of what we'd accomplished together. But that would have been selfish. These people still had jobs to do, bills to pay, careers to think about. So I kept it simple. You guys are the best team I've ever worked with, I said, looking each of them in the eye. Don't let anyone tell you different. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard Tara call out behind me. You deserve better, man. She forgot who kept the engine running. The elevator doors closed, and I was alone with my boxes and my thoughts. Tarek was right. Marissa had forgotten. Forgotten who'd stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing the payroll system when it crashed. Forgotten who'd sweet-talked angry clients when shipping delays threatened to kill deals. Forgotten who'd held her hand through every crisis, every setback, every moment when she'd wanted to give up. But I hadn't forgotten, and I never would. The drive out of the city felt like escaping from a burning building. Every mile I put between myself and that office, between myself and the life I thought I knew, felt like I could breathe a little easier. But where the hell was I supposed to go? Our house. Well, Marissa's house now, I guess, sat there like a monument to everything that had just gone up in flames. Walking back in there would be like voluntarily stepping into a minefield. So I did something I hadn't done since college. I checked into a hotel. Not some fancy corporate chain where Marissa might think to look for me, but a quiet little place called the Riverside Inn about 40 minutes outside the city. The kind of place where traveling salesmen and people running from their problems could disappear for a while. The desk clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, Didn't ask any questions when I paid for a week in advance with cash. Sometimes anonymity is worth more than comfort. The room was nothing special. Generic furniture, beige walls, a window that looked out over a parking lot, and a slice of the river beyond. But it was mine, at least for now. No shared spaces, no memories lurking in every corner, no photos on the nightstand of happier times that now felt like lies. Just silence and space to think. I set my boxes down and stared at them for a long moment. 7 years of my professional life reduced to cardboard and packing tape. It should have felt devastating, but instead, I felt empty. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left nothing but echoes. The first thing I did was forward that email to my personal account. Screenshot it, saved it to 3 different cloud services, printed it out twice. I'm not paranoid, but I'm not stupid either. If Marissa thought she could just erase me from the company we built together, she had another thing coming. I might not want revenge, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let her rewrite history. That evening, I called Neera Walsh. Neera and I had gone to business school together about 1,000,000 years ago, back when we both thought we were going to change the world. She'd become a corporate attorney, the kind who specialized in making companies' problems disappear, or in this case, making their illegal actions very expensive mistakes. We'd stayed friends over the years, grabbing drinks whenever she was in town, exchanging holiday cards with pictures of kids and dogs, and all that suburban bullshit that used to seem so important. Julian, she answered on the second ring. How are you holding up? I heard about your father. I'm so sorry. Thanks, Neera. But that's not why I'm calling. I took a deep breath. I need legal advice. Professional advice. What happened? I told her everything. The email, the timing, the personal attacks mixed in with the professional termination. I read her the exact wording, including that lovely bit about being lazy at work and in bed. By the time I finished, she was dead silent on the other end. Jesus Christ, Julian, she finally said. Are you telling me your wife fired you via email while you were on bereavement leave and included personal attacks about your marriage? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And she signed it herself? Not through HR, not through legal, just herself. Yep. I heard papers rustling on her end, the sound of someone switching into full lawyer mode. Julian, if you wanted to sue, and I mean really go after them, you'd win. This isn't just unethical, it's illegal as hell. Firing someone while they're on bereavement leave is bad enough, but doing it this way, with personal attacks mixed in, any judge would see this as retaliation and personal vendetta masquerading as corporate action. I figured as much, I said. But I don't want revenge, Neera. I don't want to drag this through the courts for 2 years while lawyers get rich off our misery. I want peace, and maybe a shot at building something better somewhere else. She was quiet for a moment. Then what do you want from me? Advice. What are my options if I don't want to burn everything down? Well, she said slowly, you could document everything, keep your options open, and start looking for new opportunities. The documentation protects you if they try any funny business down the line. Non-compete clauses, defamation, that kind of thing. Most of their legal weapons won't work when they fired you this way. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Julian, she said, and her voice got softer, more personal. I know this hurts like hell right now. But maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to stop building someone else's dream and start building your own. You're brilliant, you're experienced, and you've got a reputation in the industry. This might be the kick in the ass you needed to remember that. After we hung up, I sat on the hotel bed staring out at the parking lot. Neera was right. I had been building someone else's dream for 7 years. Pouring my expertise, my connections, my energy into making Marissa look like a genius while I stayed in the background, making sure the trains ran on time. When had I stopped being a partner and become? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Avery Burns' number. Avery was the regional manager at Orion, technically my boss, though we'd always had more of a peer relationship. Good guy, fair, the kind of manager who actually gave a damn about his people. If anyone deserved a heads up about what was coming, it was him. I didn't call him directly. That would have put him in an awkward position, having to choose between corporate loyalty and common decency. Instead, I left a voicemail. Calm, professional, brief. Hey Avery, it's Julian. Just wanted to let you know I'm stepping away from Orion permanently. Personal reasons, but it's for the best. I'll be collecting my remaining belongings tomorrow under legal supervision. just to keep everything clean and professional. Thanks for everything over the years. You're a good man, and I hope we can grab a beer sometime when all this settles down. Short, sweet, and completely dignified. No drama, no accusations, no dirty laundry aired in public. Just a professional goodbye that left him wondering what the hell had happened without putting him in the middle of it. After I hung up, I realized something that surprised me. I felt lighter. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I didn't have to worry about someone else's agenda, someone else's priorities, someone else's definition of success. I didn't have to manage up, manage down, or manage sideways. I didn't have to smile at industry events while my wife took credit for my work, or bite my tongue when she made decisions that I knew were wrong but couldn't voice without being labeled unsupportive. I was free, unemployed, betrayed, and probably about to go through the ugliest divorce in recent memory, but free. My dad always said that sometimes the best revenge was living well. But sitting there in that quiet hotel room, I realized he was only half right. Sometimes the best revenge was living authentically. And for the first time in a very long time, that's exactly what I was about to do. 2 days later, I was sitting in my hotel room working through my third cup of coffee and trying to figure out what the hell comes next when my phone started buzzing. Unknown number, but something made me answer it anyway. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was hope, or maybe I was just tired of staring at the same four beige walls. Julian Cross? The voice was deep, confident, with just a hint of a southern drawl that spoke of old money and older connections. Speaking. This is Clayton Rhodes, CEO of Helix Transit Solutions. I think we need to talk. I nearly dropped my coffee. Clayton Rhodes was a legend in the logistics industry. The kind of guy who'd built his company from a single truck and a dream into a multi-billion-dollar operation that made our little Orion freight look like a lemonade stand. We'd pitched to Helix about 18 months ago, hoping to land a subcontracting deal that would have doubled our revenue overnight. Marissa had been so nervous she'd practiced her presentation for weeks, but in the end, they'd passed. Said they were looking for a more established partner for their expansion plans. Mr. Rhodes, I said, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. What can I do for you? He chuckled, a warm sound that somehow managed to cut through the fog of uncertainty that had been hanging over me for days. Well, son, it's more about what I can do for you. I heard what happened at Orion. Word travels fast in our business, especially when it involves someone with your reputation. My reputation. Funny how I'd forgotten I had one outside of being Marissa's husband and business partner. For so long, I'd been defined by my relationship to her, to the company we'd built together. It was weird hearing someone talk about me as an individual entity, someone with value independent of my marriage or my role at Orion. I'm listening, I said. Good. Here's the thing. Julian, I've been following your work for years. That Peterson account recovery you pulled off last year? Brilliant. The way you streamlined operations during the supply chain crisis in 2022? Even better. I've watched you turn around deals that should have been DOA, and I've seen how your teams perform compared to the industry average. I sat up straighter. This wasn't just polite conversation or networking bullshit. Clayton Rhodes had been watching my career, paying attention to my specific contributions. It was the kind of recognition I'd been craving for years, but had convinced myself didn't matter as long as Marissa appreciated my work. Turns out, even when your wife stops appreciating you, other people notice quality when they see it. I want you with us, he continued. VP of Strategy. Build your own team, run your own division, report directly to me. We're expanding our East Coast operations, and frankly, we need someone who knows how to get shit done without all the corporate politics and ego trips. VP of Strategy. At Helix, I'd gone from unemployed to being offered one of the most coveted positions in the industry in the span of a single phone call. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. That's an incredible offer, I said. But there's a complication. Marissa has a non-compete clause on me. Pretty comprehensive one, too. I can't work for a direct competitor for 18 months. Clayton's laugh was even warmer this time, tinged with the kind of confidence that comes from having lawyers who could probably argue their way out of the apocalypse. Son, my legal team looked into that the moment I decided to call you. Your wife filed that non-compete wrong. Dead wrong. See, those clauses can't be enforced after a no-cause termination, especially not when that termination was handled the way yours was. What do you mean? Email termination while you were on bereavement leave? Personal attacks mixed in with professional dismissal? Signed by your spouse rather than going through proper HR channels. He was clearly enjoying this. Julian, that non-compete isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Any judge would throw it out as retaliation disguised as corporate policy. Your wife may be good at logistics, but she's apparently shit at employment law. The relief that washed over me was almost physical. I'd been so focused on the emotional betrayal, the personal humiliation, that I hadn't fully processed the legal implications of how Marissa had handled my termination. Her anger, her need to hurt me personally, had actually freed me from the golden handcuffs that would have kept me sidelined for a year and a half. Of course, Clayton continued, I'd understand if you need time to think about it. This has been a hell of a week for you, losing your father and then, well, everything else. But I want you to know the offer's real, and it's not going anywhere. We've got the budget approved, the position created, and frankly, you're the only person we want for the job. I stared out the hotel window at the slice of river visible between the buildings. 3 days ago, I'd thought my career was over, that I'd have to start from scratch at some small firm willing to take a chance on damaged goods. Now I was being offered a chance to leapfrog over everything I'd built at Orion and land somewhere even better. Can I ask how you heard about what happened? Industry connections, he said simply. Your former team members aren't exactly keeping quiet about how they feel about your termination. Word is, half your department is ready to walk if the right opportunity presents itself. That hit me harder than I expected. My team, Rena, Danica, Tarek, all of them, were willing to risk their own jobs out of loyalty to me. It was humbling and heartbreaking at the same time. These people had mortgages, families, career goals of their own, and they were ready to throw it all away because they believed in what we'd built together. Mr. Rhodes, I said, if I were to accept this position, and I'm not saying yes yet, but if I were, would there be room for me to bring some key personnel with me? Son, if they're half as good as you are, I'd be insulted if you didn't try to recruit them. Good people are hard to find, and good teams are even rarer. You bring me the talent that helped you achieve what you did at Orion, and I'll make sure they're compensated appropriately. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, just processing. In the span of one phone call, I'd gone from victim to valuable commodity. Clayton Rhodes wasn't offering me charity or a sympathy hire. He was offering me a chance to build something bigger and better than anything I'd ever imagined at Orion. More importantly, he was offering me respect, the kind of professional respect I'd been missing for years without even realizing it. At Orion, I'd been the behind-the-scenes guy, the one who made things work while someone else took the credit. At Helix, I'd be the guy making the decisions, setting the strategy, building the future. I thought about my father, about what he'd say if he were here. Probably something like, when God closes a door, son, sometimes he opens a fucking highway. Yeah, Dad would have liked Clayton Rhodes. That Saturday evening, I found myself sitting in Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar about 20 minutes from downtown that had become our unofficial team hangout spot back in the day. The kind of place with sticky floors, questionable lighting, and bartenders who'd seen everything twice and weren't impressed by any of it. We used to come here after particularly brutal weeks, when we'd pulled off the impossible and needed somewhere to decompress without worrying about running into clients or corporate types who might judge us for actually being human. I'd texted Rena, Danica, and Tarek earlier that day. Nothing dramatic, just Murphy's at 7 if you want to grab a beer. Simple, casual, the kind of invitation that could be ignored without hurt feelings if they decided they didn't want to get involved in whatever mess my life had become. But all three of them showed up, sliding into our usual booth like we'd done this 100 times before. Which, come to think of it, we probably had. Rena looked tired. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from trying to hold things together when the foundation keeps shifting under your feet. She'd always been the team's emotional barometer, the one who could sense when morale was dropping before anyone else saw the signs. Right now, she looked like someone who'd been fighting a losing battle for days. Danica had that particular Irish fire in her eyes that meant someone was about to get their ass handed to them, verbally speaking. She'd been unusually quiet since my termination, which was never a good sign. When Danica went silent, it usually meant she was planning something that would either save the day or get everyone in trouble. Sometimes both. Tarek just looked pissed. Steady, reliable Tarek, who never let emotions interfere with work, who could keep his cool when million-dollar deals were falling apart around him. But right now, he looked like he wanted to punch something, preferably something that started with C and ended with ardor. We sat there for a few minutes, nursing our drinks and avoiding the elephant in the room. Sometimes silence is more comfortable than the truth, you know? Finally, Rena cut through the bullshit with her usual directness. What really happened, Julian? And don't give us some corporate speak version. We know you, and we know this wasn't about performance or budget cuts or any of that garbage. I looked at them, really looked at them. These weren't just former colleagues anymore. They were friends who'd shown up on a Saturday night to check on me when my whole world had imploded. They deserved the truth, even if it was ugly. I pulled out my phone and showed them the email. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Rena's hand flew to her mouth like she'd been slapped. Danika's face went through about 6 different shades of red before settling on a color that suggested imminent violence. Tarek just stared at the screen for a long moment, then carefully set down his beer like he was afraid he might throw it. Jesus fucking Christ, Danika whispered, her accent thickening. She wrote that? Actually wrote those words and sent them to you. 2 days after your father's funeral, Rena added, shaking her head in disbelief. Julian, this is evil. Like, genuinely evil. Tarek was still staring at my phone. Carter's behind this. Has to be. This has his fingerprints all over it. You think? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I know, Tarek said grimly. He's been asking questions about your projects for weeks, wanting to know which clients you have personal relationships with, which deals you were instrumental in closing, what your day-to-day responsibilities actually entailed. At the time, I thought he was just trying to understand the company structure, but now it looks like he was building a case for why you were expendable, Danika finished. Little shit probably convinced Marissa that he could handle your responsibilities for half the salary and twice the personal attention. The way she said personal attention made it clear what she thought was really going on between Carter and my wife. Hell, what we all thought was going on. You know what the really fucked up part is? Rena said, taking a long pull from her beer. You built this company. You're the reason half our clients stay with us instead of jumping to competitors. You're the one who trained most of the team, who developed the systems that actually make us profitable. And she just threw you away like you never mattered. Because she forgot who was actually running things, Tarek added. Marissa's good at the big picture stuff, the vision and strategy. But you're the one who made it all work. You're the one who turned her ideas into reality. I felt something loosening in my chest, a knot I didn't even realize had been there. For days, I'd been questioning myself, wondering if maybe I really had been deadweight, if maybe I'd been coasting on past accomplishments while everyone else did the real work. Hearing my team, people whose judgment I trusted implicitly, tell me I was wrong about that, it mattered more than I'd expected. So what now? Danika asked. Please tell me you're not just going to disappear into some corporate wasteland where nobody appreciates what you're capable of. Actually, I said, I got a call from Clayton Rhodes, Helix Transit Solutions. He offered me VP of strategy. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Rena started laughing, not bitter laughter, but genuine amazement. Clayton Rhodes? The Clayton Rhodes? Holy shit, Julian, that's huge. That's like getting recruited by the Yankees after being cut from your little league team. Yeah, well, there's a catch, I said. Or maybe not a catch, exactly, but a decision I need to make. He wants me to build my own team. Bring in people I trust, people who can help me create something special. The implication hung in the air like incense. They all knew what I was really asking. Are you offering us jobs? Tarek asked carefully. I'm not promising anything yet, I said. I haven't even officially accepted the position. But if I do, yeah, I'd want you with me. All of you. We work well together, we trust each other, and frankly, we deserve better than watching our hard work get credited to some MBA pretty boy who wouldn't know real logistics if it bit him on his perfectly sculpted ass. Danika raised her glass. To Julian Cross, who's about to show everyone what happens when you bet against the wrong horse. We clinked glasses, and for the first time since receiving that email, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not just for a new job or a fresh start, but for the chance to build something with people who actually valued what I brought to the table. One condition, Rena said as we finished our drinks. When we take down Carter and watch Orion crumble, I get to be the one who sends the told you so email. Deal? I said, grinning for the first time in days, assuming there's anyone left to send it to. Monday morning came with the kind of clarity that only emerges after you've stopped lying to yourself. I woke up in that hotel room feeling more rested than I had in months, despite sleeping on a mattress that probably predated the Clinton administration. There's something liberating about hitting rock bottom. It gives you a clear view of which direction is up. I called Clayton at exactly 9 a.m., right when I figured a CEO like him would be settling into his office with his first cup of coffee and a stack of decisions that could make or break someone's day. Julian, he answered on the second ring, like he'd been expecting my call. I'm hoping you've got good news for me. I'm in, I said without preamble. VP of Strategy at Helix Transit Solutions sounds exactly like the kind of challenge I need right now. Outstanding. I'll have our legal team draw up a contract by noon. Competitive salary, full benefits, stock options, and complete autonomy over your division. You'll have budget authority for staffing and operations. I believe in hiring smart people and then getting out of their way. About that staffing, I said, I'd like to bring some people with me. Key personnel from my previous position who I know can deliver results. How many are we talking about? I thought about Saturday night at Murphy's, about the faces around that table and the loyalty they'd shown when my world was falling apart. But it wasn't just about loyalty, it was about competence. These people were genuinely good at their jobs, the kind of employees any smart company would kill to have. 7, I said. Rena Martinez from Marketing, Exceptional Client Relations, and Campaign Development. Danica Walsh from HR, knows employment law inside and out. Tarek Johnson from Operations, can optimize any system you put in front of him. Luis Moreno from Client Services, has relationships with half the Fortune 500. Marco Vasquez from Logistics Tech, brilliant problem solver. Zoya Petrov from Logistics Coordination, detail-oriented and thorough. And Henley Adams from Compliance, keeps us out of legal trouble. Send me their resumes, Clayton said. If they're half as good as you say they are, we'll make this work. I trust your judgment, Julian. You don't get the reputation you have by surrounding yourself with mediocrity. After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about work. Not the grim satisfaction of putting out fires or meeting impossible deadlines, but genuine enthusiasm for building something new and meaningful. It was like rediscovering a part of myself I'd forgotten existed. I spent the next hour crafting individual messages to each team member. Not mass texts or group emails, but personal invitations that acknowledged their unique skills and what they meant to me professionally. These weren't desperate pleas from a sinking ship. They were opportunities from someone who was about to captain a much better vessel. The responses came back faster than I'd expected. Rena replied within minutes. Hell yes. When do we start? Danica's message was even shorter. About fucking time. Tarek sent a professionally worded acceptance that still managed to convey his excitement. Luis, Marco, Zoya, and Henley all responded with variations of, I'm in before lunchtime. By that afternoon, I had 7 resignation letters submitted to Orion Freight Systems and 7 new employment. That's when my phone rang. Avery Byrne, my former regional manager, sounded like he was calling from inside a tornado. Julian, what the hell is happening over there? I just got back from a client meeting and found 7 resignation letters on my desk. 7. From your entire core team. People follow leadership they respect, Avery, I said calmly. Maybe you should ask yourself why they're leaving. I had no idea Marissa approved your termination, he said, and I could hear genuine distress in his voice. This whole thing is insane. We're hemorrhaging staff, clients are asking questions, and frankly, I don't know how we're going to maintain operations with this kind of brain drain. Maybe you should have thought about that before letting the CEO fire her husband via email while he was grieving his father's death. Avery was quiet for a long moment. She said it was a mutual decision. Budget cuts, restructuring, that kind of thing. I never saw the actual termination notice. Want to see it now? I asked. I forwarded him the email and waited while he read it. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Jesus Christ, Julian. This is completely inappropriate. Unprofessional doesn't even begin to cover it. Yeah, well, inappropriate seems to be the new normal at Orion. How's that working out for you? It's not, he admitted. Clients are confused, the team is demoralized, and frankly, Carter has no idea how to manage the accounts you were handling. The Peterson contract is already showing stress fractures, and the Morrison deal looks like it might collapse entirely. I felt a grim satisfaction hearing that. Not because I wanted to see people fail, but because it validated what I'd always known. Good work matters, and you can't just replace experience and relationships with a pretty face and an MBA. She's been distracted, Avery continued carefully. Carter has no idea how to actually manage operations. Everyone's falling apart without the institutional knowledge you took with you. That's what happens when you prioritize politics over performance, I said. Look, Julian, I know this is awkward, but is there any chance you'd consider coming back? Maybe we could work something out, restructure the situation. Avery, I cut him off. I appreciate the sentiment, but that ship has sailed. I'm VP of Strategy at Helix Transit Solutions now. My team and I are building something better. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know about how fucked Orion really was. Best of luck, I said, and for the first time, I actually meant it. Avery was a good guy caught in a bad situation. He didn't deserve to watch his company implode because the CEO couldn't separate personal drama from professional responsibility. After I hung up, I realized something that surprised me. I felt sorry for them. Not for Marissa or Carter. They'd made their bed and could lie in it. But for the employees who'd have to deal with the fallout, the clients who'd trusted the company with their business, the vendors and partners who'd get caught in the crossfire. Building something new is always better than watching something good get destroyed. And that's exactly what we were about to do. By Friday afternoon, I was sitting in my new office at Helix, a corner suite with actual windows and furniture that didn't look like it came from a bankruptcy auction, when Clayton knocked on my door frame with the kind of grin that meant he had news worth celebrating. "You're going to love this," he said, settling into one of the leather chairs across from my desk. Carson Freight just pulled their contract from Orion. Effective immediately. 3-year deal worth about $12 million annually. I set down my coffee and stared at him. Carson Freight had been Orion's biggest client, the kind of whale that could make or break a company's entire fiscal year. They were also notoriously loyal. Once they committed to a logistics partner, they stuck with them through thick and thin. Getting Carson to switch providers was like convincing a lifelong Yankees fan to root for the Red Sox. How the hell did that happen? I asked. Clayton's grin got wider. Apparently, when James Carson heard you were now working for us, he decided Orion wasn't the right fit for his company's future needs. Seems you made quite an impression during those quarterly reviews. James Carson. I remembered him well. Old-school businessman who'd built his freight empire from a single depot in Ohio and never forgot where he came from. We developed a good working relationship over the years, built on mutual respect and the kind of straight talk that was becoming rare in corporate America. He was the type of client who valued relationships over PowerPoint presentations, substance over style. He specifically asked for you to handle the transition, Clayton continued. Said he wanted to work with people who understood that business is built on trust, not just spreadsheets and fancy suits. The irony was almost too perfect. Marissa had fired me thinking she could replace my contributions with Carter's ambition and MBA credentials. Instead, she'd lost the crown jewel of her client portfolio because she'd forgotten that in the logistics business, relationships matter more than anything else. That account alone justifies bringing you on board, Clayton said. But honestly, it's just the beginning. The press is already calling this the story of the year. Logistics executives' quiet comeback. Harvard Business Review wants to do a case study. Forbes is asking for an interview. Press statement. I asked, though I already knew what my answer would be. Keep it professional, I said. No drama, no personal attacks. Just facts about our new division and our commitment to client service. Clayton nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of class that separates leaders from wannabes. You could have buried her in the media, and instead, you're taking the high road. That weekend, the dominoes really started to fall. Rena officially joined Helix on Monday, bringing with her the kind of marketing expertise that had made Orion's campaigns actually effective instead of just pretty. Danica followed on Tuesday, and suddenly we had an HR professional who understood that employee retention was about more than pizza parties and corporate buzzwords. By Wednesday, our new logistics unit was starting to take shape. Not just a collection of individuals, but a cohesive team that had already proven we could work together under pressure. The best part? We were building something fresh, without the baggage and politics that had slowly poisoned the atmosphere at Orion. Tarek arrived on Thursday and immediately started optimizing our systems with the kind of efficiency that made accountants weep tears of joy. Luis brought his client relationships, Marco brought his technical wizardry, and Zoya brought the attention to detail that prevented small problems from becoming big disasters. For the first time in years, work felt like work was supposed to feel. Challenging but not exhausting, collaborative instead of competitive, focused on results rather than office politics. That's when I got the call from Avery again. "Julian," he said, and his voice sounded like he'd aged about 10 years in the past week. "I need to tell you something, and you're probably going to enjoy this more than you should." "I'm listening." Marissa is panicking. Full scale, red alert, all hands on deck panic mode. The Carson contract was just the beginning. We've lost Henderson Logistics, Midwest Supply Chain, and Prairie Transport. For major clients in 1 week. I felt a weird mix of satisfaction and sympathy. Satisfaction because these were predictable consequences of poor leadership. Sympathy because I knew how hard those contracts had been to win in the first place. "It gets worse," Avery continued. "Carter walked out yesterday, just packed his shit and left. No notice, no explanation, just gone. Turns out when things get tough, pretty boys tend to disappear faster than morning mist." "Shocking," I said dryly. "Half the senior staff has resigned. The compliance department is basically non-existent now that Henley's gone. And the worst part? Marissa keeps asking me how to contact the clients you used to manage personally, like I have some secret Rolodex of Julian Cross's professional relationships." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That those relationships belong to you, not the company. That trust and respect aren't transferable assets you can just hand over to the next guy." Monday morning brought news that shouldn't have surprised anyone, but apparently caught Marissa completely off guard. 3 more clients had terminated their contracts, citing concerns about operational stability and changes in key personnel. The business press was starting to take notice, running articles with headlines like, "The Exodus. When key talent leaves, clients follow." Clayton forwarded me one particularly brutal piece from Industry Weekly that called Orion's recent upheaval a masterclass in how personal drama can destroy professional success. They'd interviewed several former clients who spoke glowingly about my work while diplomatically expressing concerns about the company's current direction. "You know what the beautiful thing is?" Clayton said when we discussed the article. "You didn't have to do anything except be good at your job. No revenge plots, no media campaigns, no dirty tricks. You just continued being the professional they should have valued, and the market rewarded you for it." He was right. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reputation. I'd spent years building relationships based on competence and integrity, and those relationships had followed me when I moved. Marissa had gambled that her position as CEO was more valuable than my contributions as an operations manager. The market had just proven her wrong. Sunday night, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I knew by heart, but hadn't heard from in weeks. "Marissa." One line that somehow managed to be both desperate and commanding at the same time. "We need to talk. Please." I stared at that message for a long time, sitting in my hotel room that had somehow become more comfortable than the home we'd shared for 7 years. Part of me wanted to respond, to get some kind of closure or explanation. The bigger part of me, the part that sounded like my father, knew that some conversations weren't worth having. I didn't answer. Monday morning brought Avery to my new office at Helix, looking like a man who'd been asked to fix a sinking ship with duct tape and good intentions. His usually perfect corporate attire was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew, small details that screamed of a company in crisis mode. "Marissa is panicking," he said without preamble. "Full scale, call an emergency board meeting panic." Carter walked out when rumors started spreading that he'd been sabotaging files and undermining team morale. Turns out pretty boys run when things get ugly. I felt a grim satisfaction hearing that. Carter had orchestrated my downfall thinking he could slide into my role without consequences. Reality had other plans. "Half the senior staff has resigned," Avery continued. "The remaining employees are updating their resumes. And the clients who haven't already jumped ship are asking pointed questions about operational stability." Later that day, an envelope arrived via courier. "Marissa's lawyer, offering a settlement that was generous enough to make me think she was genuinely scared about what I might do next. The numbers were impressive, but money couldn't fix what she'd broken. I signed it without ceremony or negotiation. Let her keep her company, what was left of it. I already had something better: respect, a team that chose to follow me, and the kind of professional satisfaction that can't be bought or stolen. Some victories aren't about winning. They're about walking away with your dignity intact while others face the consequences of their choices. 3 months later, Helix posted its best quarterly results in company history. My team's new operational initiatives had cut shipping costs by 21% while improving delivery times across the board. We'd gained 4 major contracts that Marissa had lost, plus 2 new ones that came specifically because of our reputation for reliability and innovation. The business magazines were calling it the quiet coup, a story about how talent and integrity could triumph over politics and personal drama. Forbes ran a feature titled, "When Good Employees Go Bad," for competitors, using our success as a case study in employee retention and corporate culture. I didn't give interviews. Didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. At our team celebration dinner, held at a restaurant considerably nicer than Murphy's Tavern, Danica raised her glass with the kind of Irish flair that made everything feel like a victory lap. "To Julian Cross," she announced, her voice carrying across the private dining room we'd reserved, "who showed us how to walk away with dignity and still win." The toast felt good, but not because we'd beaten Marissa or proven Carter wrong. It felt good because we'd built something valuable with people who appreciated what we brought to the table. We'd turned a devastating setback into a launching pad for something better. Rena had started dating someone from the marketing department at a client company. Tarek was already talking about pursuing his MBA now that he had job security. Luis had been promoted to senior client relations manager. Marco was developing proprietary software that could revolutionize inventory tracking. Everyone was thriving, not just surviving. As I looked around that table at faces that had become family, I realized something important. I hadn't lost anything when Marissa fired me. I'd gained everything. The freedom to work with people who valued excellence over ego. The opportunity to build something lasting with a team that chose to follow me. That was the real victory. Not beating Marissa, but discovering what I was capable of when I stopped limiting myself to someone else's vision of success. 1 year later, I stood by Miller's Creek, the same fishing spot where my father used to take me when I was a kid back when the world seemed simpler and betrayal was something that happened to other people. The water moved the same way it always had, steady, purposeful, carving its path around obstacles rather than fighting them. Dad would have appreciated the metaphor, probably would have said something like, "See, son, the creek doesn't get mad at the rocks. It just finds another way." In my hand was a smooth stone from the riverbed, worn perfect by years of current and time. Just like he'd taught me during those early morning fishing trips when he was trying to prepare me for a world that would test my character in ways I couldn't imagine. "The river moves fast, son. But you? Be the stone. Let it pass." I'd finally learned to be the stone. Marissa's company was gone now, absorbed by Meridian Logistics after months of hemorrhaging clients and talent like a sinking ship with too many holes to patch. The business press had documented every step of the collapse with the kind of clinical precision that made cautionary tales out of human failures. Harvard Business Review had even done a retrospective titled, "When Personal Vendettas Destroy Professional Success," using Orion's downfall as a case study in what not to do. I'd read the articles with detached interest, like studying someone else's mistakes. There was no satisfaction in watching something I'd helped build get torn apart. But there was a certain validation in seeing that actions have consequences, even for CEOs who think they're untouchable. My division at Helix was thriving beyond anything I'd imagined possible. We'd been recognized as the fastest-growing logistics unit in the industry, with client retention rates that made competitors wonder what the hell we were doing differently. The answer was simple. We treated people, employees and clients, like they actually mattered, not just as numbers on a spreadsheet or stepping stones to the next quarterly bonus. The team that had followed me from Orion was still together, still pushing each other to be better. Rena had been promoted to Director of Strategic Marketing and was dating a great guy from our IT department. Danica was heading up HR for the entire East Coast division. implementing policies that actually supported employees instead of just protecting the company. Tarek was my deputy VP, already being groomed for bigger things, and had finally started that MBA program he'd been talking about for years. We'd built something that mattered, something lasting. I skipped that stone across the water, watching it bounce 4 times before disappearing beneath the surface. Dad had always said the trick wasn't throwing harder, but finding the right angle, the right timing, the right touch. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well, building something meaningful, and proving that character matters more than politics or pretty faces or who you're sleeping with. The river kept flowing, just like it always had, just like it always would, and I'd finally learned to flow with it, rather than fighting against the current. That was the real victory. That was the quiet revenge.